You know what time it is. Alright guys, today we're going to be talking about one of the most infamous knights of the Round Table, Sir Lancelot. So heading over to the lands of France, we have his father, King Bon, who is, at the time, going head to head in a war and getting destroyed. Soon enough, he gets one of his best castles captured because his steward sold him out. You on your own now, sucker. Very clear that this castle meant a great deal to him in terms of defense, because not too long after he found this out, King Bon died from broken heart syndrome, which is a stress-induced disease of the heart muscles. Helen, who is Lancelot's mother, was also stuck in the dumps. Her husband is gone, his brother is gone, she is smoking them cigarettes back to back. She is stressed out right now. Stressed out. And Lancelot himself is still just an infant at the time. So with all these different things going on, it was really hard for her to pay attention to what Lancelot was doing. Seeing how the young child was being neglected, a fairy by the name of Vivian, the Lady of the Lake, pops up, takes Lancelot, and vanishes into thin air. She takes him to the other side of the lake where she came from, but this wasn't just a lake. It was actually a portal to the Celtic otherworld. But the lake is also guarded by magic. So if you saw the lake, it would just look like a regular lake. Guess who's the one that taught her this magic? Fucking Merlin. What a goddamn hero. To put things into perspective, Vivian is the same woman that gave King Arthur his Excalibur and trapped Merlin in the tower with his own magic. She is the one responsible for raising Lancelot, teaching him the ropes about life, and giving him a proper education. But there's one thing that she didn't tell him: his true identity. So growing up, he never knew who he was. He never knew who his parents were, where he came from, or his true name for that matter. Now, Vivian knew that one day Lancelot would eventually grow to leave her side. So she blessed him with one more thing. She gets him ready to go down to the court of King Arthur, cause she knew that Lancelot had the makings to be one of the finest knights in the world. So they pull up to Camelot, and I mean, she had my boy looking fresh. White gear, white horse, white Air Force Ones. Look at them kicks, boy. My guy was out here applying full court pressure. And while they were on their way there, she was telling him that even after he becomes a knight, that he shouldn't become complacent, that he should journey on his own adventures and find out his true identity. For a long time, Lancelot remained unconvinced of King Arthur's exploits. King Arthur this, King Arthur that. Well, what makes her so special? That is until he saw her in action. Upon his arrival, Lancelot witnessed King Arthur going in on the enemy forces, inspiring him to come up and fight along her side. They get into Camelot. Hey, who are those weirdos? Those are the Knights of the Round, boy. Really? Whoops. And then he catches a glimpse of King Arthur's wife, Queen Guinevere. Oh, Lord. Man, there ain't no way she this thick. And them hips, And just like that, Lancelot had fallen in love with the queen. A recipe for disaster. He later gets knighted personally by King Arthur herself. Remembering what Vivian said, Lancelot ventures out on his own journeys, which leads him to the castle known as Dolorous Guard, a fortress that would challenge any knight that had the audacity to roll up on it. Where everybody else had failed, Lancelot succeeded, defeating at least 20 knights with his own hands. The Copper Knight, who was supposed to be like the final boss, saw what was happening to his boys, and he was like, man, I don't want nothing to do with that type of shit. He literally flees the scene, and Lancelot becomes the new lord of Dolorous Guard. The final knight that Lancelot did defeat led him into a cemetery. In it, he comes across a slab with the words written, "Only one knight can lift this slab." and his name will be revealed. He lifts the slab and he discovers his true identity, that his father was King Bond, that he is Lancelot, everything. Of course, he was shook, but he couldn't let anybody else find out who he really was, since this would cause conflict of interest. Up until this point, everybody only knew Lancelot as the White Knight due to his armor. This is where the term White Knight comes from, Lancelot being Captain Save-A-Ho. Next we have Galahad. Galahad is the uncrowned king of the Distant Isles, and he was looking to add Britain to his domain. He sends a message to King Arthur saying, "If you surrender now and work for me, you won't look like such a bozo when we run through your people." Arthur looked at this message and was like, "Oh, he think we sweet over here. He think this a game. I'm on your head." Galahad shows up for the battle, but he was so concerned about how his fame looked that when he saw Arthur had less forces, he called off the entire thing for a year and told her to bring more men. The next year, the same battle commenced. This time with the third party at her side, Lancelot, clad in all black armor to conceal his identity, came to King Arthur's aid, wreaking destruction on all of Galahad's people. See, prior to this battle, Arthur and Galahad used to host jousting tournaments where a white knight would destroy everybody there in the same fashion as this black knight. He figured this has to be the same person. So during one of their brief intermissions, Galahad gets into contact with Lancelot and told him that he knows who he is and that he'd do anything to have him on his side. Lancelot tells him, cool, call off the fight and give Arthur the win. So the next day, Lancelot shows up on Galahad's side. All of Arthur's knights are looking at each other like, what type of shit is this? Now we gotta fight him too? They begin the battle and Galahad threw in the white flag, letting it all go. When Galahad gets back to his camp, he finds Lancelot in a room crying. Lancelot tells Galahad that he really wants Guinevere, but he can't do anything about it because she's already married. He puts his hand on Lancelot's shoulder and he tells him, don't be a simp, man. Look, I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but Guinevere has an OnlyFans. OnlyFans? That's preposterous. I kid you not, she's probably out here getting dunked on by somebody else right now. But Lancelot still wanted her. Galahad then says, you know what, bro? I got you. So eventually, Galahad and one of Guinevere's friends were able to arrange meetings where Lancelot and Guinevere could lock lips with each other in the most grotesque ways imaginable. For a long time, Gawain was on a search to figure out who's that one unique knight that took over Dolorous Guard, and he was more than certain that it was Lancelot. So one day, he pulls up to Galahad's kingdom, fighting against several soldiers, including Lancelot himself. The only reason that Gawain and Lancelot didn't kill each other is because Lancelot's younger cousin stepped in to stop them. Lancelot was upset at the fact that he had to fight his brother, but he did what he had to do. Finally, he broke down and revealed his true identity to Gawain. Gawain then pitches this off to Arthur, and she was so excited that she invited Lancelot to be a part of the greatest knights in her kingdom, the Round Table. She invited Galahad as well. Lancelot later goes on to become one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Knight of the Round, one of Arthur's right-hand men. As Lancelot continues his adventures, he finds himself saving a woman from a tub of boiling water in classic White Knight fashion. This was Elaine. The fact that he was able to save her with such ease made her assume that he must be the same guy that took over Dolorous Guard, which made her want him even more. She wanted him so bad that she had her friend cast a spell on this man to make it seem like she was Guinevere. So when he dropped by to give Guinevere the death strokes, he finds out that it's actually Elaine in disguise, and that he had just gotten a random woman that isn't Guinevere pregnant. Guinevere finds out that Lancelot did this behind her back, and she was furious. She banished him from Camelot herself. For several years, Lancelot roamed the woods as a wild man until his cousins brought him back while questing for the Grail. Over a decade comes to pass. Guess who comes knocking at Camelot's door? Lancelot's long-lost son, Galahad, the true knight destined to take the Holy Grail. The same servant that MASH is fused with in Grand Order. So in a way, he is also her father. Best Dad 2020. Once reunited, Galahad goes on to whoop Lancelot's ass, which, among many other things, is what earns Galahad his own seat at the round table. Now, this whole affair situation didn't really bother Arturia, since she was a woman anyway. In the Fate verse, their marriage was strictly political. Hell, even the real King Arthur really didn't even care so long as they kept that shit under control. Let me tell you how that turned out. Not good. Not good at all. So as the affair between Lancelot and Guinevere continued, one of the most fatal mistakes they encountered was when Gwen smooched this man up in front of a public audience. The fuck? Now she got King Arthur out here looking crazy. This is how Jada did Will Smith. So all the people who thought Archer's relationship was sketch at first were really starting to get suspicious now. This is when Arthur's sister, Morgan Le Fay, comes into the fray. Morgan was so bitter that she couldn't have Lancelot for herself that she uses her own son, Agravain of the Round Table, to spy from the inside just so he could expose what was really going on. Now the cat's out the bag for everybody. The members of the Round Table and the people of the kingdom begin to lose their faith in Arthur, which makes the already crumbling Round Table fall apart. Once the news about Lancelot and Guinevere gets out, Arthur is forced to make a move. The White Knight makes an attempt to flee, and right before he leaves, Arthur has Guinevere arrested and condemned to execution. She knew that Lancelot would come back for his queen. All she had to do was set up the guards and wait. The White Knight emerges, making quick work of Gawain's brothers, Gareth and Gaheris, and putting them to death. Now Arthur was genuinely upset about his nephews, but Gawain was furious. He wanted blood. He pulls Arthur with him into a war against Lancelot's people, chasing him all the way to Dolorous Guard and then back to his own domain in France. In the Fate verse, this segment was Arthur taking a political trip to Rome. Lancelot knew that he had to prolong the battle due to Gawain's enchantment that made him stronger during the day. When the time was finally right, he struck Gawain down with Galahad's sword, but he refused to take his life. While she was gone, Arthur left her kingdom in the hands of her son Mordred, who out of spite decided to overthrow the kingdom and take everything for herself. The real myth tells us that Gawain later wrote to Lancelot saying that we should squash it, and told him to help King Arthur against Mordred, who has now betrayed the kingdom. In Fate, Gawain told Lancelot to never come back. Soon enough, this leads to Lancelot finding out that his king has met her demise, which he largely begins to blame on himself. The guilt begins to consume him and he goes mad, gaining his berserker form. In the real version, Lancelot didn't exactly go mad at this time, but in a similar fashion, Guinevere blamed everything on their relationship, broke all ties with Lancelot, and became a nun. So Lancelot says, okay, well if she's doing it, then I'm gonna do the same thing. He gives it all up, becomes a monk, and stays out the way. This remained the same until one night he saw her in one of his dreams. She had become ill. Despite their personal vows, he went out of his way to be at her side, but it was already too late. Guinevere had met her demise. And with Lancelot being a fasting monk, combined with all of the stress of not having Guinevere around, his own health began to deteriorate as well. And before you knew it, the White Knight had met the same fate as his love 6 weeks later. Let me know what you guys think. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Follow me on Twitter for updates on the channel, and I will be back with more Tight Moon content. It is your boy Tsiah. I'm out.